Hello, brothers and sisters. How are you all? In the name of Jesus Christ, I hope you're staying faithful and true. And behind me, we gather here every Saturday to feed the homeless on the Hastings. And the reason why I'm making this video is to show you what happens on the other side. On the other side, you're feeding the homeless and the people that are here, not to help them continue in their addiction, but it's also share the gospel of Jesus Christ with them. As we feed their stomach, we also want to feed their spirit with substance that is for the spirit. I've been trying to make this video for a long time, but I have not gotten around doing it. So while we were doing this, I came across a video one time a brother sent to us, and it's from online, done by Vibe, reaching people who are lost, trying to save them from the shackles of the enemy and drug addiction, the spirit of addiction and all of that. But on the other hand, the enemy is working the opposite. The enemy is doing his own part. As God's people do their own part, the enemy is also busy doing his own part. So you're going to see that in this video, as I'm going to share with you, is how wicked the enemy is, and how wicked the heart of man is, that even he convinced people that those who are doing this are righteous. So I'm just trying to share that with every one of you so that you can know that and pray for these people that are on this street, that are in the street corner, addicted by drugs, in different ways, the way that they are, the way that some of them don't want to be in this situation, and some of them they can't help it, but it's because of the sin that has gripped them. So while we are doing this, the enemy is busy trying to keep them in their sin. Not far from here, there are people that are actually set up table to deal on people that are actually addicted on drugs, thinking by feeding them drugs you can help them get out of drug addiction. It's like someone who's addicted to alcohol and who's an alcoholic. I'm bringing him and feeding him more alcohol in order supposedly to keep him safe from getting addicted, continue being an alcoholic. So I'd like to share that with all of you so that you can get in prayer and pray for these people, and even pray for these ones that the enemy is using to make them believe that they are doing something great. Pray for them, that God will continue to heal them, and that God will continue to bring clarity, to rebuke the spirit of addiction in them. And please don't hate these people that are doing the opposite, because they are also lost themselves. Pray for them, that God may shine his light upon them, and hopefully that some of them will come to the faith in Jesus Christ.
These packages contain heroin, cocaine, and crystal meth that's being handed out on the streets of Vancouver for free.
From this tent over here, we are distributing a safe supply of drugs. The points of drugs you will get from the boxes being distributed from that tent have been tested. This means that you are at no risk of overdosing on fentanyl, and we want this model to be legislated so that it can happen all over the place, so our friends and family stop dying.
I'm in Vancouver, Canada, which is home to some of the most progressive drug policies in the world, and it's also in the midst of a deadly opioid overdose crisis. In 2016, the British Columbia government declared the overdose crisis here a public health emergency. Since then, more than 7,000 people have died of drug overdoses. Many of the deaths are concentrated in this neighborhood, the downtown east side, which is one of the poorest areas in Canada. I'm going to meet up with a founder of the Drug User Liberation Front, a local activist group that keeps breaking the law to hand out free tested drugs because they believe it will save lives. I'm Manisha Krishnan, and this is Free Drugs.
This is 3.6 grams of ketamine, 3.5 grams of cocaine from the brick, 3.5 grams of cocaine washed with acetone. This is 3.1 grams of crystal meth, 3.7 grams of actual heroin, and then Xanax bars.
Eris Nix is a co-founder of DULF, the Drug User Liberation Front, a coalition of activists that has been giving out free tested drugs in the downtown eastside to demonstrate the concept of safe supply. She's ordered about $2,000 worth of drugs from the dark web that she's planning to give away after it's been tested for purity.
These drugs will be broken up into like quarter grams and then given away for free to people. And I'm like, a quarter of a gram of drugs is zilch. It's like one hit for some people, you know. But at least I know with that one hit, they're not gonna die of a fentanyl overdose. And they're gonna know what they're getting, and they're gonna know how they're dosing themselves with the drugs, which is totally different than street drugs.
Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid that's up to 100 times more powerful than morphine. Used medically as a painkiller, counterfeit versions of fentanyl began causing dramatic spikes in overdose deaths in the US and Canada around 2015, and it's gotten increasingly worse since then. In British Columbia, overdose deaths jumped by 74% in 2020, the worst year ever. The US had a record 93,000 fatal overdoses in 2020, more than 2/3 of which involved opioids. In some jurisdictions, fentanyl has completely replaced heroin and has reduced life expectancies. Since last year, DULF has hosted numerous drug giveaways, handing out crystal meth, cocaine, heroin, and opium in the downtown east side. Technically, it's considered drug trafficking and is punishable by jail time. DULF wants the government to allow compassion clubs, a model that would allow community members to supply each other with clean drugs without worrying about being arrested. So tell me the origin story behind the Drug User Liberation Front. What is it and what is its purpose?
So I was working in the shelter system in Vancouver, and in 2016, fentanyl hits the streets, and we see this escalating number of deaths. And it was so bad that at the time, 2016 through 2018, we were responding to 5 to 10 people dropping dead, and you're having to breathe oxygen into these people's lungs and keep them alive, sometimes for like 20 minutes while you're waiting for paramedics administering naloxone, whatever. And the amount of death I was getting exposed to made me be like, well, we need to fix this. It's an issue. I'm gonna go work on this from a public policy perspective, go work for the government. And all I was met with was, we can't do that. What you're advocating, getting people a clean and safe supply of drugs, is something that's outside of our purview, or it's violating this, memorandum of understanding, nah. And I was like, fuck you, until eventually I had my position terminated. So DULF kind of grows as the natural being like, here's what we need to do. We're gonna do it with or without your help. We're going to get clean drugs into people's hands so that they stop dying.
What do you want the government to do, like in an ideal world?
In an ideal world, the government just gets out of our way and lets us open a store that is like a liquor store. And I'm like, if you guys want to tax us so you can provide healthcare and addiction services and recovery beds and all this shit, for sure. Just get out of our way. Let us get clean drugs into people's hands. Let us distribute them in a way where there's not going to be cross-contamination. Let us educate the public about how to use drugs, keep each other safe, how to use naloxone, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, just get out of our goddamn way and don't arrest us.
The Vancouver Police Department told me that while DULF's giveaways are technically drug trafficking, it sometimes overlooks illegal actions tied to protests. Can you talk a little bit about the mental toll that doing this type of work takes on you?
I'm scared. I'm constantly scared, and I can't say that enough. Like, I live in constant fear. So I'm like, take the fear of arrest, take the fear of violence out of the equation.
Eris believes everyone should have access to safe drugs, not just people who are addicted, because anyone who uses drugs is at risk of dying from an accidental overdose.
Not everyone that uses drugs has a medical disorder where they have chaotic substance use they need to rectify. You know, maybe you're someone who uses heroin once in a while for fun. Maybe you're someone who uses coke on the weekend. Maybe you're someone who smokes crystal meth for whatever reason. But in every case, if you go to the street supply of drugs, you run the risk that your drugs will either have fentanyl in them when they're not supposed to, or if you're trying to buy fentanyl, have an unpredictable quantity of the drug fentanyl in them. So really what we're trying to prevent is this death, this like pallid, horrible death we're seeing all around us. And in the downtown east side, despite all its progressive policies, nothing they've done has slowed down the stem of death.
I think that at first glance, when you hear about a group of young people that's handing out drugs for free, it sounds kind of insane. It sounds very sensational. I think after meeting with Eris and the Drug User Liberation Front, you see that there is a logic to what they're doing. You know, it's not like it's fun to be purchasing a bunch of drugs, testing them, labeling them, and then handing it out. It's a desperate attempt to just stop people from dying. Vancouver is considering decriminalizing possession of all drugs, and there are already safe injection sites and prescription heroin programs here. But Elizabeth Holliday, who directs harm reduction for the Public Health Authority, says there are barriers to receiving pharmaceutical alternatives to street drugs.
It is a number of hoops that you have to jump through in order to get there, and then ultimately, it's the prescriber who's going to determine what medication is going to be the right one for you, what's available at the site. It's intensive. It's a time commitment. So for across town, you have to go 3 times a day, potentially, which could be your whole day. Like if you think about what we do in our days, and if we had to go 3 times to the same place to pick up a medication, like that would be a barrier to sort of the activities of daily life.
Holliday says activist groups like DOLF have a history of pushing forward drug policy in the city.
I think in some cases, like as the health authority, we're not able to necessarily, like we certainly can't be handing out illegal drugs that have been purchased from wherever, even with spectrometry testing. But the activism is so important, and I think of the legacy here of places like VanDu, the Vancouver area network of drug users, the activism that led to the creation of Insight. Like there is a history of this community pushing government and health authorities and officials to do better, to make change.
DOLF is planning more drug giveaways and protests, but Eris says it's hard to stay positive. Are you optimistic?
I'm not exactly sure we'll see things change very quickly, and I'm sure we'll see a lot more people die, you know? I can stay optimistic in the idea that I'm doing the right thing to try and help my community. I can have hope. In the fact that we have allies in this community who are trying to help us and trying to change things. But in terms of being optimistic that things will change, like absolutely not. In fact, I'm almost confident everyone I know will die.
Brothers and sisters, did you see that? That is how the devil does his loving. He does it by killing you softly, with a smile on his face and with a big benevolent looking scheme to say we are taking care of these people from overdosing, but he's actually killing you and using other people who would do it with a smile on your face. Jesus came into the world to save sinners free. He died for them because he loved them. He gave up his life as a ransom for them. He didn't give up his life for them so they can remain in their sins, but that they can come to him. He said, "Come to me, all you who are heavy laden and loaded down, I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon yourself and learn from me, for I am mild. For my yoke is kind and my load is light." How beautiful is that compared to what the devil said. The devil wants to give you the yoke of iron, the yoke of addiction, the yoke of death. He wants to kill you with a smile on his face. And he's using every useful idiots in the book to do it. So when the next time you think about the world situation, why all these problem is persistent, think of the people who will lose a lot of livelihood from this, and who will lose a sense of belonging from all of these addiction in the east side. Think about that. Many of them will not exist if all this trauma and chaos doesn't exist. The devil wants this to keep on going, and his solution is to give you the same thing, killing you softly. May Jesus Christ, the love of Jesus Christ, shine upon the hearts of these people, and may they change their ways, repent, and turn from all this wickedness. And those who are addicted, turn from addiction and come to Jesus Christ. He will cleanse you by his blood and his righteousness.